Okay, so for today's video, it's sort of a little bit out of order. I had already filmed the second portion of this video where I read this article here. So this is going to be sort of like a history type video. I will be talking all about Harriet Tubman. So, as I said, I have already filmed the portion of this video where I read this old newspaper article. It's another old news. I've done a few of these videos. So I found this article from a newspaper from June of 1914. So this was about a year after Harriet Tubman had died, and this was an article about a memorial that was held for her in her honor. But after I filmed this, as I was sort of just reading a little about Harriet Tubman, I thought her life was pretty interesting. So I thought I pulled up a Wikipedia thing about her life. So I'm just going to sort of skim through and read a few things about her life. I'll just read right from my phone, so it's sort of an ad lib or improvised sort of reading here. Okay, so this is from Wikipedia. So Harriet Tubman, she was born in 1822 and she died in 1913. And she is well known for saving and helping other enslaved people to escape. So, let's see. Eventually, she joined the American Civil War as a scout and also as a spy for the Union Army. And she was also an activist in the movement for women's suffrage. So, Harriet Tubman, she was born in Maryland, and her birth name is Araminta Ross. I hope I'm saying that right. And she was born as a slave. Well, not born as a slave, but placed into slavery after she was born. So I would like to, first I'll read about her birth. Let's see, she was born Araminta, and she was called Minty Ross, to enslaved parents. Her mother's name was Harriet, and she was called Rit Green, and her father Ben Ross. So Rit, her mother, was owned by someone named Mary Pattison Brodess, and Harriet Tubman's father Ben was held by a man named Anthony Thompson, and those two slave owners married. It was the woman's second husband, and they had a plantation near Blackwater River in the Madison area of Maryland. So let's see. Tubman's maternal grandmother's name was Modesty. It's a cool name. So her grandmother had come on a slave ship from Africa. So her mother, Rit, and it says, who may have had a white father, she was the cook for the Brodess family. And Harriet's father, Ben, he was a skilled woodsman who managed the timber work on the Thompson's plantation. So Harriet's mother and father, they married around 1808 and had 9 children. Lena, Mariah Riddy, Soph, Robert, Minty, who is Harriet, Ben, Rachel, Henry, and Moses. And then it talks about how her mother, Rit, had struggled to keep her family together because of slavery, people wanting to buy and sell her children and herself and her husband as slaves, so that they were always sort of being threatened to be separated from each other. Talks about once when there was a trader from Georgia who had approached the Brodess family and had wanted to buy Harriet's youngest brother, Rit, Moses, and Harriet's mother, Rit, had hid the boy for over a month because she didn't want him to be sold to another place. And Harriet's mother confronted the owner, and so at one point the slave traders had started coming toward the slave quarters to take the boy, and Harriet Tubman's mother, Rit, had said to them, "You are after my son, but the first man that comes into my house, I will split his head open." And so they backed away, and they did not sell her son. So Tubman's biographers agree. It says that stories told about this event within Harriet's family influenced Harriet's belief in the possibilities of resistance. So Harriet's mother was working and assigned to work in the big house. So Harriet did a lot of caring for the younger children. It says a lot about how she was beaten, and it scarred her for the rest of her life. So she would run away sometimes for a few days. She would wear lots of layers of clothing to protect herself. It says she also worked at the home of a planter named James Cook. And at one point she had gotten very, very sick with the measles, and she was sent home with her mother so that her mother could take care of her. And as soon as she was better, she went back to work at the other home. So when she got older, a lot of her work was working in the field and the forest, driving oxen and plowing and hauling logs. So there was one incident where she had suffered a severe head injury that had affected her for the rest of her life. It calls this person an overseer who had threw a 2-pound metal weight trying to hit another enslaved person who was attempting to flee, and the weight accidentally struck Tubman instead. So says she was bleeding and unconscious, and she was returned to her owner's house and laid on the seat of a loom, where she remained without medical care for 2 days. And after that, she often had extremely painful headaches and seizures and just become unconscious at times. So this remained for the rest of her life. And now, looking back, it's said that she probably suffered from temporal lobe epilepsy as a result of that injury. So I'm sure she suffered seizures for the rest of her life. But Tubman says that after this injury, she began experiencing visions and vivid dreams, which she had interpreted as revelations from God. So she became a very passionate in her faith. And it does say that she was illiterate. I guess she was never taught to read, but her mother used to tell her Bible stories, and she did attend church. It talks about how she rejected the teachings of the New Testament that urged that slaves be obedient, and she found guidance in the Old Testament tales of deliverance. So, let's talk about how Anthony Thompson, who was the owner of Harriet's father, it says that he promised to, and I don't know this word, manumit her father at the age of 45. And I think that means that he could be free after that age, I think. I'm not sure. So after Thompson died, they did follow through with that promise in 1840, and Harriet Tubman's father continued to work as a timber estimator and foreman for the Thompson family. Let's see what that word means, manumit. Enfranchisement is the act of freeing slaves by their owners. Okay, so that is what it meant. So he sort of freed him from slavery. Let's see. But he continued working there. So then they thought they would talk to an attorney and try and investigate the legal status of Harriet Tubman's mother as well. And what the lawyer discovered was that there was a similar agreement for Harriet Tubman's mother, Rit, that she was also to be freed at the age of 45, and it was also supposed to apply to Rit's children as well, that they were all to be legally free once they reached the age of 45, but the Pattison and Brodus families completely ignored this stipulation. And of course it was very hard for the Tubman family to challenge this legally. So around 1844, Harriet got married to a free black man, and his name was John Tubman. So it talks about how the mother's status dictated that of the children. So any child born to Harriet and John would be enslaved because Harriet was still a slave. So these were called blended marriages, free people of color who married enslaved people. And that was not very uncommon in Maryland. Around this time, half of the black population was free in Maryland. So many African American families had both free and enslaved members. So Tubman changed her name from Araminta to Harriet soon after she was married. And then down here it talks about her escape from slavery. So in 1849 she had become sick again, which sort of made her a little less valuable as a slave. And they actually wanted to try and sell her, but they were having a hard time selling her. So here Harriet later said, "I prayed all night long for my master till the 1st of March because he was sick. And all the time he was bringing people to look at me and trying to sell me. When it appeared as though a sale was being concluded, I changed my prayer," she said. "1st of March I began to pray, 'Oh Lord, if you ain't never going to change that man's heart, kill him, Lord, and take him out of the way.' A week later, Brodess died, and Tubman expressed regret for her earlier sentiments." So then she was starting to worry because since her owner had died, she figured she would be sold or something and her family would be broken apart. And she didn't want to let that happen. She said, "There was one of two things I had a right to do. Liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." So Harriet and two of her brothers, Ben and Harry, they had escaped. Let's see. So it says that Eliza Brodess, who, if I'm remembering, was the owner of Harriet, she probably didn't recognize their absence as an escape attempt. So after 2 weeks, she realized, and she had posted a runaway notice in a newspaper called the Cambridge Democrat, which I was trying to find that on this website where I find these old news articles. I was having a little trouble finding it, but there is a picture of it here, where she offers a reward of up to $100 for each slave returned. And then after they had left, Harriet's brothers had second thoughts. One of them may have just become a father, so they went back, and that kind of forced Harriet to return with them. So there's a picture of the newspaper article here. I'll try to read that. It says, $300 reward. Ran away from the subscriber on Monday the 17th. 3 slaves. Named as follows. Harry, aged about 19 years, has or something on one side of his neck, a something when? I don't know what that is. Just under the ear. He is of a dark chestnut color, about 5 feet 8 or 9 inches height. And Ben, aged about 25 years, is very quick to speak when spoken to. He is of a chestnut color, about 6 feet high. And Minty, aged about 27 years, is of a chestnut color, fine looking, and about 5-something feet high. $100 reward will be given for each of the above named if taken out of the state, and $50 each if taken into the state. They must be lodged in Baltimore, Easton, or Cambridge jail in Maryland. So that was the notice trying to find them. So, soon after that incident, Harriet had decided to escape again without her brothers. She sang a coded song to Mary, a trusted fellow slave, to try to get a message to her mother. And it said in song, "I'll meet you in the morning," she intoned. "I'm bound for the promised land." So it says her exact route is unknown, but she used the network known as the Underground Railroad. It was an informal, well-built or well-organized system composed of free and enslaved blacks, white abolitionists, and other activists. Many of them were members of the Religious Society of Friends, who are also called Quakers. So it gives where they think her route probably was. So she traveled by night, guided by the North Star, trying to avoid slave catchers. So it says, finally eventually she had crossed into Pennsylvania with a feeling of relief and awe, and then recalled the experience years later. She says, "When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven." So after she had reached Philadelphia, she started to think about her family, and she missed them. And she thought, she was free and that they should be free also. But she worked odd jobs and saved some money. And eventually Congress passed what was called the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, which had heavily punished abetting escape and forced law enforcement officials, even in the states that had outlawed slavery, to assist in their capture. So it increased the risks for those who were escaped and trying to help those who were trying to escape. So she had gotten word that her niece and her two children, 6-year-old James Alfred and baby Araminta, were going to be sold. So she went back to Maryland. She went to Baltimore, and she was hiding there. Keziah, who is her niece, her husband, who was a free black man, his name was John Bowley, he made the winning bid for his wife. Then while the auctioneer stepped away to have lunch, John, Keziah, and their children escaped to a nearby safe house. When night fell, Bowley sailed the family on a log canoe 60 miles to Baltimore, where they met with Tubman, who brought the family to Philadelphia. So then over the next year, she returned to Maryland and helped to guide away other family members. And this part I liked. In 1851, Harriet had returned to Dorchester County for the first time since her escape, and this time to find her husband, John. She had saved money from various jobs. She purchased a suit for him and made her way south. But in the meantime, while she was gone, John had married another woman named Caroline. And Tubman had sent word to him that he should join her, but he insisted that he was happy where he was. So Tubman at first prepared to storm their house and make a scene, but then decided he was not worth the trouble. I love that. Suppressing her anger, she found some enslaved people who wanted to escape and led them to Philadelphia. John and Caroline raised a family together until he was killed 16 years later in a roadside argument with a white man named Robert Vincent. That just made me like Harriet a whole lot more. So, she just continued on helping to free slaves. So she just repeatedly, over 11 years, went back to Maryland and rescued around 70 slaves, including her brothers Henry, Ben, and Robert, their wives, and some of their children. She also gave specific instructions to 50 to 60 additional fugitives who escaped the North. One of her last missions into Maryland was to retrieve her aging parents, her father Ben, who had purchased Rit, her mother, in 1855 from Eliza Brutus for $20. But even when they were both free, the area became hostile to their presence. And then it just talks a lot about all of the dangers that they had to go through trying to escape. She did carry a gun, and she was not afraid to use it. And she also became the first woman to lead an armed assault during the Civil War. So she spent the later years of her life in Auburn, tending to her family and other people in need. And she did find love again with a bricklayer, and he was 22 years younger than she was. They were married and they had a baby girl named Gertie. As she aged, the seizures, headaches, and suffering from her childhood trauma had continued to plague her. And in the 1890s, she actually had brain surgery at Boston's Massachusetts General Hospital. And she received no anesthesia for the procedure. She chose instead to bite down on a bullet, as she had seen Civil War soldiers do when their limbs were amputated. So it says in 1911, Tubman's body was so frail and she was admitted into the rest home named in her honor. I think that she had helped to establish this place. She was surrounded by friends and family, and she died of pneumonia in 1913. Just before she died, she told those in the room, "I go to prepare a place for you." She was buried with semi-military honors at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. Okay, so I really liked hearing about her life. So now the next part of the video, I will read this article. Light candle here. Today I'm going to be reading some more old news. So this one is from an old newspaper called the Colorado Statesman, and this newspaper is from Denver, Colorado, and the date of this article is Saturday, June 27th, 1914. And so I chose this one because I wanted to read about Harriet Tubman. So, Harriet Tubman was born March 6th of 1822, and she died on March 10th, 1913, which was about a year before this was written. So this is a memorial to Harriet Tubman. I would like to say that some of the language that is used, although this is a positive article, memorial to Harriet Tubman, some of the words I would like to replace because I just don't feel comfortable saying them. So, let's start. Let's see here. So this is Auburn, New York. Okay. High tribute was paid to the memory of the late Harriet Tubman. Familiarly known as Aunt Harriet, on Friday evening, June 12th, when a large bronze tablet, a token of love and esteem of the citizens of Auburn, was unveiled at the Auditorium Theater. The tablet, which has been placed in the county courthouse, bears the following inscription: In memory of Harriet Tubman, born a slave in Maryland about 1821, died in Auburn, New York, March 10th, 1913. This tablet is erected by the citizens of Auburn, 1914. Called the Moses of her people during the Civil War, with rare courage, she led over 300 people up from slavery to freedom and rendered invaluable service as nurse and spy. With implicit trust in God, she braved every danger and overcame every obstacle with all she possessed. Extraordinary foresight and judgment, so that she truthfully said, "On my Underground Railroad, I never run my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." The unveiling was marked by appropriate exercises, prominent men of both races participating. The principal address was delivered by Dr. Booker T. Washington, who eloquently recited the achievements of Harriet Tubman, glorified her life, and characterized her courage, constancy, and wisdom as models for the races of the world. The speaker also extolled his race for the great progress made in 50 years of freedom and predicted for it a bright and happy future. Mayor Charles W. Brister paid a glowing tribute to Aunt Harriet, as did former Mayor E. Clarence Azen, who presided and made the presentation address. Mrs. Mary E. Talbert of Buffalo, president of the Empire State Federation, read an excellent and interesting paper on the life and deeds of Harriet Tubman. The spacious lower floor of the theater was filled, and all the boxes were occupied. Seated on the stage were the speakers, the members of the Auburn Festival Chorus, an orchestra, and guests. In one box was a group of Civil War veterans, while another was occupied by a party of prominent society women of Auburn. Conspicuous in a front seat of a lower box was Emily Howard of Sherwood, to whom a tribute was paid during the evening by Dr. Washington for her kindly interest in him. Delegations representing colored societies occupied boxes, and colored citizens from adjacent cities were present. As the curtain rose, Olmsted's orchestra played a selection from Adele, which was followed by a solo, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, by Miss Lena J. Bruggs, assisted by the festival chorus and audience. Prayer was offered by the Reverend John Quincy Adams of the seminary. The festival chorus then sang Jerusalem the Golden. In making the presentation address, former Mayor Aiken said, "We are gathered here this evening to pay tribute to one of the noblest and greatest character of Civil War, a woman who braved countless dangers and risked her life in service for her people and country. There have been very few monuments erected to slaves and very few to the memory of, I will say, black people, and I believe but one to a black woman and a slave. But Auburn is erecting this tablet. A great philosopher has said that nothing is settled until it is settled right. Today we are erecting a tablet to her who knew what was right and did her share in settling things that way. The people of Auburn are proud to honor this woman of courage who rendered such wonderful service to her people and her country. We erect this tablet to her memory as a heroine and patriot, and it is with a feeling of pride that we unveil this tablet to her memory." At this point, the lights in the house were dimmed, and Miss Alice Lucas, grandniece of Aunt Harriet, stepped forward and drew back the flag. In the light of the colored electric bulbs, the effect was most pleasing. Auburn is reprinted, I don't know that word, at this ceremony by its mayor, maybe it's meant to say represented, by its mayor, who will speak for them, said Mr. Aiken, and introduced Mayor Brister, who was greeted with applause. He spoke as follows. By the occasional illuminating flashes of greatness originating from unexpected and oftentimes obscure sources, are we continually reminded that in the divine conception of the universe, provision was made for the proper guidance of the human race. History teaches us that the attribute of courage and a conviction of duty toward humanity have very little regard for race, creed, or color, that great crises always develop great leaders to conduct the people through the Red Sea of their difficulties. In accepting this tablet today, the city of Auburn recognizes the merit of her to whose memory it is dedicated. In accepting this tablet, we reaffirm in a public way our belief that in the fullness of time, character shall be measured by its true standard, irrespective of its origin or its surrounding. Indolent luxury and irresponsibility are not character builders. Only by conflict with difficulties can be shown the metal of which is made. Having in mind a purpose which carries with it a consciousness and a conviction of right develops an element of character which must be the measure of the man. Measured by such a standard, the woman whose memory is today honored and perpetuated must be ranked with the great characters on history. The spirit of devotion to her race, the skill displayed in carrying out her purpose, and the success achieved won for her not only the admiration of the great men of her own time, but a not inconspicuous place in the Hall of Fame. Not because the subject of this memorial was a woman, nor because she was black, is this tribute tendered, but rather to commemorate the inherent greatness of her character. Born as she was in the obscurity of slavery and bound by its shackles, the memory of this woman should be an object of reverence to every member of her race, and the example in her achievement an inspiration to every member of our great nation. Dr. Washington, in opening his remarks, praised Auburn for the way in which it was commemorating the life of such a noble woman. He spoke of the wonderful hardships and dangers that she had endured and said that he had experienced some of them. He had known what it was to be hungry, he had known what poverty was, and he had known what it meant to be of dark skin. He said that Harriet Tubman had been spoken of by some as being ignorant, but, said he, coming in contact with people and the realities of life educate one, and through her coming in contact with people and problems, I believe that she was one of the best educated women in the world. Dr. Washington spoke of Auburn and its immediate vicinity as having produced many great men. He lauded Seward and others, and paid a glowing tribute to Miss Emily Howland of Sherwood, who has done much for the colored people and, although 87 years old, occupied a box and was one of the interested among the audience last evening. He pointed to the great advancement that the black community had made in America. So that's all that I wanted to read today. I just picked this one article about Harriet Tubman. What does that say? Okay, so that's all. I wanted to read that because of the upcoming Juneteenth holiday that is on Saturday, June 19th. So I hope that you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching.